Welcome to Energy Matters, presented by New Jersey Policy Institute. I'm your host, Jeanette Hoffman. Thanks for joining us. We have a packed show today. Greg Lalevee, business manager of Local 825 International Union of Operators and Engineers, is here to talk about New Jersey's energy landscape. Dan Cassino, director of the FDU poll, breaks down the results of a new survey focusing on rising energy costs. But first, Tom Bergeron, senior editor of Binje, is in studio to talk to us about the top energy issues facing New Jersey's employer community. I'm here with Tom Bergeron, senior editor of the New Jersey publication Binje, which stands for Business in New Jersey Every Day. Tom, congratulations. You just launched Binje on May 5th, and less than 2 months later, you've published 1,000 pieces of content. How did you do it so quickly? And congratulations on your success.
Thank you very much. We were very voluminous, myself and my managing editor, Linda Lindner, just drop out content every day. We love to do it. We love what we're doing. We love covering the state.
Well, congratulations. You also now have a print edition right here, which I got in my mail. I was very excited to get it, and it's very comprehensive. It focuses on the businesses, large and small, that make up New Jersey's very diverse economy. So tell me a little bit about energy. You cover a diverse topics in industries in New Jersey, but I'm guessing that energy policy has been one of the hottest topics that you've covered over the past several years. There's a lot of debate going on right now. What are you hearing from New Jersey businesses about New Jersey's energy landscape?
What I'm hearing is they need more of it, right? And that's
true.
what everybody is saying. Yes, energy is we cover all different sectors, whether it's energy or higher ed or real estate or economic development. Energy is certainly one of the sectors we cover a lot of, and when we do it, it's in its connection to the business community, which is what we do. So I say that as a joke, but the reality is the state needs more energy. Businesses need more energy. It's not just the AI boom, which certainly is contributing to it, but there is a need for energy, and the state's ability to find it, create it, has been challenging. There have been some missteps and some positive moves, but that's where we're at.
So we talked about demand. We need more energy, not just for AI, but just for a growing population, growing businesses. What are some of the sources, some of the supply of energy sources that you're hearing about that are in development right now? We have so many emerging technologies. Can you talk to me about some of them?
Absolutely. I mean, let's start with the idea of natural gas, right? That's where most of the energy comes from. Everyone thinks, okay, natural gas, the pipes, this and that. I get it, all good. But there are different ways that we can create more natural gas and use natural gas differently. Right now, that's the leading energy producer in the state. By examples of that, SJI, South Jersey Industries, is getting ready to open up just a transformative, unique plant, we'll call it, in Linden, where they're literally going to take food waste, and don't get me started about how much we throw food away when really we should be sharing that with people in need, but they're going to take food waste and able to transform that into natural gas. So people don't realize that landfills and the stuff that comes out of landfills is hurting the environment. So we're going to skip the landfill. We're going to transform that into natural gas. That's a huge, huge help. Another story we had just the other week down at New Jersey Natural Gas in their office down in Lakewood. They brought in a company called Carbon Renew, a young, brilliant company from Pennsylvania. They set up a system in their warehouse, well, they'll be the guinea pig, where they will be able to pull carbon out of the air, which is good for the environment, reclean it, rebring it out, so it'll have less carbon in the air and save on energy costs. So the one thing that we need to realize is not so much about just creating new energy, but also saving energy that we have. Yeah,
and carbon capture is something that has been successfully done in other states in the country. So it would be interesting if New Jersey has that going forward as an emerging technology. Speaking of, supply and demand, energy rates are going up. There's a lot of controversy right now of who is to blame. Some say it's PJM, the grid operator. Some say it's the fact that we just don't have the supply. Natural gas hasn't been developed as it should have been under the Murphy administration, and other sources like nuclear haven't been fully developed. So what are you hearing from the business community about that debate right now?
So the debate is, why don't we have enough? And it's easier to point fingers on what the auction was, or were we prepared, or did we go down the wrong lane in certain instances. The better conversation the business communities have is, what can we do moving forward? Mm-hmm. And a lot of it are these new technologies that we're talking about that are being developed around the state. They will help. We can't put all our eggs in one basket, and whether it's solar, whether it's offshore wind, whether it's nuclear, It really needs to be a combination of all of that, and not just the energy companies, which are certainly leading the charge on this, but all companies are saying, hey, how can we work together to find new ways to create new energy to bring into the system, because that's what we need.
Yeah, and you've written a lot of interesting stories on energy over the past several years, whether it's offshore wind, EVs, natural gas, solar. What is some of the most read stories that you've written on energy policy over the past several years?
Well, oddly, when people talk about energy policy in the business community, the things that resonate the most with the business community is not a new policy or a new initiative or new incentive, but the mandates. Those are the ones that drive the business community crazy, and it's really the one that the next governor needs to understand and deal with. Businesses want certainty. They want to deal with certain things. They're willing to work. Nobody wants to be told what to do. The consumer, the mandate that all EVs, that 50% of all new cars sold need to be EVs by 27 or 28, which is insanely ridiculous because A, people don't want it, and B, now you're telling the auto industry, this is how you need to run your business. So if you want to make a mistake in government, it's tell a business how to run their business. They will make as many EVs and sell as many EVs as the public wants. If we want to create incentives to do it, that's fine, but don't force it. So the mandates, whether it's electrification of buildings, EVs, any of that, those always do poorly, and those are always very well read by the business community.
Yeah, and not to mention that the infrastructure just simply isn't there yet to have this by 2035. But I want to go back to something that you said about the next governor, right? We're looking towards the future. We're going to have a new governor, whether it's Mikey Sherrill or Jack Ciattarelli. What do you see the difference in these two candidates in terms of their energy policy? And how do you think energy ranks in terms of the top issues of the next gubernatorial campaign?
So look, Jack has been very clear. He is very pro-natural gas. He thinks we need to create more plants. We need to reopen some plants that may have been shut down. And there are challenges with that because you just can't do that overnight. There's going to be a whole lot of issues with supply chain and this and that, getting things up and running. But he's been very pro-natural gas. Mikey has not been as specific on her plans as Jack has been. But the biggest issue going forward for the state, look, we have to worry about we're not just a state, it's what the federal government wants. So there's going to be issues with they're going to push A over B or B over C, and depending on where that comes and where the funding was, there recently was a decision by the Trump administration to push back on some of the solar things. Is that going to impact a company like Solar Landscape in Asbury Park, which is doing fabulous work? Still remains to be seen, maybe a little bit. It all goes back to the certainty of how can we plan for that.
Yeah, and while there's a lot of uncertainty right now, but I think we'll know in November which direction we're going to go in. But it's always great to have you here. You do a fantastic job covering energy in New Jersey. We look forward to reading Binge every day. Thanks
Pleasure.
for being here.
Thank you.
Up next, I'll speak with Greg Lalevee, Business Manager of Local 825, International Union of Operators and Engineers, about leadership on energy price increases. Plus, I'll chat with Dan Cassino, Director of the FDU poll, about the findings of a recent poll on energy policy. Welcome back to Energy Matters. I'm Jeanette Hoffman. Joining me now to discuss New Jersey's energy landscape is Greg Lalevee, Business Manager of Local 825, International Union of Operators and Engineers. Greg, thanks for being here.
Thanks, Jeanette. Happy to be here.
Well, there's a lot to talk about, including a recent poll from Fairleigh Dickinson University that was just released. The FDU poll showed New Jersey residents are pretty frustrated with the lack of leadership on energy price increases, which have gone up by 20% or even more in some cases. So, in your opinion, what should New Jersey leaders be doing to make New Jersey more affordable?
This is very simple. Get as much energy into the grid and online as fast as possible. The needs in New Jersey are about 19 gigawatts, and in-state production is 13, which means we have to go out to the grid and buy 6 from the others who produce it, so they get to set the prices. We're at a deficit. Back January 1, 2018, New Jersey was a net exporter of electric. Today, we're a net importer. Become a net exporter and prices go down. It's a simple supply and demand question.
Well, speaking of the grid, a little-known entity called PJM, which is the grid operator for New Jersey and 12 other states, they've come come under some considerable criticism by politicians, including Democratic gubernatorial nominee Mikey Sherrill, because some people say that they are not letting clean energy onto the grid, and that's why we have this, deficit in energy. Do you agree with that? Is that the reason for these rate increases?
No, anybody who's blaming PJM at the time, I believe, is acting out of naivete. PJM does not produce electric. They manage the electric that they're given. So at this point in time, if you were to look in the PJM queue, there's about 14 kilowatts of mostly clean energy from New Jersey that they could put on the grid. The issue is that 12 of the 14 are the offshore wind farms that have pulled out. So it's energy that's not there. People have to understand that. This is the equivalent of blaming the library for not having the books. PJM doesn't make the electric. They manage the electric they're given. And the projects that people are talking about being there are projects that aren't going to get built anytime soon.
Understood. Now, we know New Jersey is part of a regional economy. We don't operate in a vacuum, and neither do our businesses here. So how would you say New Jersey compares to our neighboring states of New York and Pennsylvania in the race for AI investment? And more broadly, how do we compare to other states in keeping our electric bills down for our residents?
We're getting our butts kicked here by our neighboring states. Again, if you looked at PJM, they estimate our demands to go up by about 4.5% to 5% a year, and that's natural growth. Add data centers and AI, and that number starts to explode. When you look at Pennsylvania and New York, they put energy on the grid as fast as they can get it. Pennsylvania, and people who know Pennsylvania understand that they have a rich history in coal mining. So they have coal plants, they have nuclear plants, they have gas plants. They're mining the shale gas through the Marcellus area. Back when New Jersey even shut some of their plants, some of the talk tracks were, well, these coal plants were too expensive to operate. That's true, but people had to turn the page and read page 2, and it was because there was plenty of natural gas coming out of Pennsylvania that was cheap. So Pennsylvania is pouring everything they can into the energy sector. And even Governor Hochul, when she took over for green energy advocates, she advanced wind projects. We're watching New York out in the ocean building their offshore wind, whatever people may think of it. And we signed the Offshore Wind Development Act here in New Jersey. Governor Christie signed it in 2010, and we haven't managed to get a single windmill done, and all the developers have pulled out of here. So we're getting our butts kicked on this front, and these data centers and AI is the future economy.
And now we just heard recently that Governor Murphy said he might try and sign a bill into law during lame duck to mandate clean energy by 2035. How will that help New Jersey with our energy supply and our demand?
The mandates are awful. We have to get whatever energy we can on the grid as fast as we can to be competitive. That's doing the green energy thing. New Jersey sold out to wind energy and we got beat. We had no plan B, nothing to fall back on. We were taking other plants out of service as we were allegedly going to build the offshore wind, and then we didn't do it. Even if we look at the small wind project known as Fisherman's Energy, for whatever reason, this administration's BPU turned that project away. So it's very hard to understand what they're committed to. But to say that we're going to go all clean by 2035 is to not acknowledge what exists, what's real, what's physics, and what's science.
And certainly will not help our escalating energy costs. And I also wanted to change topics, but this is still really important to our economy and New Jersey commuters. And I drove the Turnpike today. So I want you to tell me a little bit about the New Jersey Turnpike expansion project that's being pursued by New Jersey and how that will impact workforce development here.
Well, the Turnpike extension is a necessary project. To listen to the detractors talk about too many lanes to the Holland Tunnel, they're ignoring the exponential growth of Jersey City and Hudson County. They're not solving the problem of moving people, goods, and services in and out of the region. They take a very simplistic view of this should just be transit. That means freight lines and people moving. Haven't seen a plan come out of any of those people yet. I've heard the arguments of congestion and pollution from the very same people that are telling me I'm going to be driving an electric car without any pollution by the time this bridge would be built. So bottom line is the bridge was built at a point in time, designed by engineers who estimated its lifespan. We're past that lifespan, and estimated the amount of traffic that the bridge would handle, and it's handled significantly more traffic. So for those who want to say we have to redeck it, they're ignoring the foundation that needs to be upgraded and replaced, just like the Goethals Bridge, just like the Bayonne Bridge, just like the Tappan Zee Bridge. These things need to be upgraded, and it's all about moving people, goods, and services in and out of Hudson County. The argument for Holland Tunnel is just a red herring.
Well, infrastructure is definitely one of the issues that our next governor is going to have to address. But I just wanted to ask you one last question. From your perspective, we talk about energy policy debates, and there's a lot of discussions, but you represent the real world. You have 8,200 members. There's a disconnect here, I feel like, from the real world impact and these energy debates. What is the impact on workers and residents on the bottom line here?
Energy is the underpinning of the entire economy. If we look just over to Pennsylvania, when Pennsylvania started to mine the shale gas, the whole steel industry in and around Pittsburgh, which had collapsed in the 70s and early 80s, had a resurgence. New jobs, good jobs, middle-class jobs, all because the energy cost of those factories was cheap and manageable. So we need a robust amount of energy to run the economy, to have the economy of the future. If we want to be in the gig economy, if we want to be in the data center economy, if we want to be in the AI economy, we can't have enough electricity, and we can't have it fast enough or robust enough. It needs to be robust, it needs to be resilient, it needs to be reliable. That is the driver of an economy, and that's what puts workers to work. It gives people jobs. It creates new businesses. It's the underpinning of everything economic.
Thanks so much. We really appreciate your expertise on this issue, and we look forward to talking to you again.
Thanks, Jeanette. Appreciate it.
Joining me now to discuss the findings of a recent poll on energy policy is Dan Cassino, director of the FDU poll. Dan, you recently released the results of a poll you conducted in partnership with the Fuel Merchants Association of New Jersey. Your poll revisited questions about energy from earlier in the year to see how views in the state may have changed on this issue. So let's talk about what's changed and what stayed the same.
And really, what's striking to me is how much things did not change. I mean, the reason we were in this poll again, and look, polling is the opposite of lawyering, right? If you're a lawyer, you only ask questions that you know the answer to. When you're polling, you only ask questions you don't know the answer to, because you're spending a lot of money to run these polls. And so we figured, okay, energy bills just went up by 20%. Yeah. So people's views on energy are definitely going to have changed. And we saw is that their views didn't really change that much, which in itself is really interesting, because we've had months of Governor Murphy and the leaders in the Assembly and the Senate saying PJM is the problem, it's the transmitters that are the problem, blaming everybody for this, and not really offering a concrete solution. So we asked people, what should we do about this? The views overall didn't change. And for me, I look at that and I go, that's a failure of leadership, right? This is a crisis,
right?
And you should never let a good crisis go to waste, right? If you're a leader, on whatever your views on this are, you should be looking at this saying, people are upset about this. We could do something now. You can push something through and say, this can fix it. And the fact that we haven't any movement tells me no one is taking advantage of this. No one's actually moving things.
Yeah, and you noted specifically that views on supply issues haven't shifted much at all since February. So what does this stability on supply issues suggest about voter engagement or awareness when it comes to energy policy?
Well, first off, voters are very, very engaged with the idea. The don't knows on this are very low. People are really interested. They want to talk about this. However, when we ask about who's responsible for these price increases, people have absolutely no idea. So what happens is people blame, number one, the utility companies. They say, well, it's PSEG, it's Jersey City that are doing this because that's who's on the bill.
Right.
And of course, as you and I know, they have nothing to do with this. They are just passing on the energy. This is not their fault at all. But people say, well, they're on the bill. The other thing people do is they blame whoever they don't like. So Democrats say it's Donald Trump. It's the national federal government that's doing it. Republicans say it's Phil Murphy and it's the state legislature. So people don't know, and there's kind of blindly lashing out about who's responsible for it, but again, not really moving towards solutions.
But given that strong partisan divide on who the voters are blaming for these rising energy costs, do you interpret this as like a role of political identity, or is it actual policy understanding that's shaping these responses?
No, we do see on some of the questions, we do see big partisan divides. And a lot of that is because that makes life easier, right? If I am a Democrat or Republican, I go, well, the leaders of my party say this, so I'm just going to go with that. And therefore, I don't have to think. Because the alternative is I have to do my homework.
Okay.
And I've been teaching college for 20 years, and people do not like doing their homework. So it's about party leadership. But remember, when people refer back to their party, they're generally getting it right? If I am a Democrat and I listen to what Phil Murphy says, he's probably saying what I would think anyway. If I'm a Republican, I look at what President Trump says, it's probably what I would think anyway. So it's a pretty good heuristic for people to have. But when it comes to something like energy policy, which honestly is not a partisan issue, right? This is like filling potholes. It's about how do we get the most efficient energy delivered to people's houses in the cheapest way possible. It shouldn't be about that. This is a technocratic issue much more than it really should be a partisan issue.
Yeah, and people just want to keep the lights on for not that much money.
Exactly right.
What I found interesting was there was a noticeable increase in support among Democrats for natural gas since February. It was like a 7-point swing. Mm-hmm. So what factors do you believe are contributing to that shift? Well, it's a traditionally green energy focused demographic with the Democrats.
Absolutely, and we still see a strong correlation there. But I think what's happening is, to some extent, reality kicks in at a certain point where if you're a Democrat, you say, yes, we want green energy. And Donald Trump is saying, we're not going to approve any green energy plans. We're not going to do anything for the next several years. I think maybe everyone at that point has to rethink what they're doing when you run into reality that, okay, this is not going to work.
And then the other piece of this that I thought was really interesting is the data center piece. Yeah. There's growing skepticism, especially among independents. So how could this impact what state legislators are doing and what kind of economic development initiatives we're going to see in the future with such skepticism around the use of electricity for data centers?
Yeah, so let's just back up a little bit. Mm-hmm. I mean, the issue here is that Governor Murphy announced we're going to build big data centers here in New Jersey in order to take advantage of the enormous amount of capital that's being put into AI, put into cryptocurrency, and this is a huge part of the economy. In the most recent quarter, the investment in AI was more than consumer spending and driving the economy, so it's a huge amount of money. Government said, we're going to build these data centers. The problem is these data centers require enormous amounts of electricity, enormous amounts of clean water. And New Jersey is not the place you do that because we don't have really super cheap electricity. So we're building these data centers, and we ask people in the poll, all right, we're building these data centers. Where should we gain the power from these? Green energy is not an option here because we need the data power right now. And we get an increasing number of these independents saying, let's just not build those data centers. Let's just not do that. And to some extent, this is a classic question about environmental policy, right? We are putting economic growth above, pitting that against environmental policy. However, in this case, people are saying, is this the growth we want? Is this actually worthwhile? Do we actually like this? Because, of course, there are a lot of people skeptical of AI in general.
Yeah, but at the same time, it could be the future of our economy.
Look, it's a lot of money to leave on the table. The question is, you haven't sold people on it. Again, this is a leadership issue because people pay attention to the political leaders. If you're Governor Murphy and you think this is where the future of our economy is, you have to sell that to people. And the fact that independent voters, and some of the Democrats, are saying, why are we doing this? Mm-hmm. That's a problem.
Yeah, and the poll also shows a really consistent support since February for an all-of-the-above approach to energy strategy. So given these strong poll numbers, do you expect to see policymakers adopt this approach in dealing with our energy supply?
Look, the question is to what extent are policymakers going to move past partisanship and towards the sort of technocratic solutions? Well, because even if you are saying we want full green energy eventually, you do have to grapple with those issues of reliability. You do have to grapple with issues that we can't do that right now. So you can't let perfect be the enemy of good. Even if you're saying, well, I don't like natural gas as much as I like other things, okay, but your option is coal from West Virginia versus natural gas right now.
And which basically what we're getting right now.
And that's an easy case to make to anybody. Look, it's better to make natural gas in New Jersey than to buy coal from West Virginia. And those are the sort of trade-offs we have. They're hard to poll. I'm really glad we did the follow-up here to show how public opinion is moving here. And people are moved by public opinion. I know that people are moved by public opinion because I get calls from state legislatures saying, I hate your poll, why did you do this? Which is a sign that we're getting under their skin and they don't like what we're finding.
Yeah, and so again, I'm going to go back to that. You mentioned a lack of leadership on this issue, and the public narrative, you said, is very much up for grabs. So how do you think this shakes out in the gubernatorial campaign? Because you're a pollster, we're in the middle of a gubernatorial campaign. What do you see happening here?
Look, the candidate who has a plan to say, this is what I'm going to do to reduce energy costs. That is the number one thing in people's minds, reducing energy costs. It's always about affordability. And that's going to benefit people. That's going to benefit the candidate who's able to come out and say, this is what I'm going to do. I've got concrete steps. I can make this happen.
And where do you see, you've done a lot of polling on the gubernatorial races and other issues. Where do you see energy lining up in terms of like the top 5 issues?
Well, people will say it's one of their top issues. I'm not sure right now what is actually driving people's votes, right? So we don't see much evidence to someone saying, boy, I really want to vote for Jack Ciattarelli, but I don't agree with him on energy, therefore I'm not going to vote for him. I think it's actually more likely to go the other way. That is, I decide I support Jack Ciattarelli or I support Mikey Sherrill. Okay, whatever they say, I'm going to glom onto that, right? And that's the lack of leadership seeing the polls. We don't have clear messages from leadership saying, this is what we're going to do. Once you get that, then you're going to start seeing people move.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see how this gubernatorial race progresses and what the candidates say on energy policy, and we'll certainly look to have you back on to talk about it.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me, Jeanette.
Thanks for being here. That does it for today. I'm Jeanette Hoffman. Thanks for watching.